Hi, everybody. Welcome in. Happy Saturday to you. I hope you are having a great day so far, and I hope that I can help make it a little bit better and inspire you and, entice your creativity, if you will, because this is a cool project we've got going on today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarah Lovecraft. I am a Beadalon design team member. And I've taught several of these Michael's classes, and a lot of times I see very familiar faces. So thank you for everybody who continues to join me, and welcome to all of you who have never taken a class with me before. I appreciate it, and I hope you'll stick around. So I've got a really cool project. This one is super easy. In fact, this project's probably going to go by really, really quickly. Just want to kind of warn you in advance. If you were looking for like a full hour, it's probably not going to take that long. It's probably going to be closer to about the 30-minute mark. But that being said, it's worth it. And it's because this is one of those kinds of projects where I'm going to get you to kind of think outside the box with shapes and textures with your designs, as well as kind of mixing your metals, which some people are uncomfortable with. I hope that I can help you get a little bit more comfortable with doing that. And it's just an easy project that you can very easily convert into something else. It is considered an earrings project. There are two of them, and it was labeled as an earrings class, of course, but it's a large earring. And I want everybody to know ahead of time, I teach a lot of earrings classes, not just here at Michael's, but on my own website as well. And I have a tendency to teach earring projects where the size is large. Part of that is because I really like large earrings. The other reason is because it's easier for me to show you visually something that is large, right? It's easier for me to teach on a larger scale. And then you can scale this back to fit your own needs. So if this earring is way too much and way too big for you, you've got a couple of options. You can either make it smaller, choose smaller beads and choose smaller findings and components, or you can take it and turn it into a pendant very easily. And I find that that's true with most earrings projects. So with all that being said, let's get down to business, right? We're going to talk about materials. We're going to talk about tools, and then we're going to get started with this. Sorry, my tripod is a little stiff today. Okay, so let me start out by showing you what the, I have a mess on my bead mat here, what the sample is. So the sample is this earring. Now, in comparison to my hand, like I said, this is a large earring. It has a very large, chunky quartz bead. It has a large hoop, and there is extra stuff going on. It's asymmetrical. There's a lot going on here, and this might just be way too much for your ears, and that's okay. Right? I don't want you to shy away from this project just because of that, because like I said, you could very easily put this on a long piece of chain or on a piece of leather or cord, or you could bead an entire necklace around this. If not, it would make a really cool keychain. Also makes a great pair of earrings for those of you who are not faint of heart, right? You gotta be kind of bold to wear an earring this big, but a lot of us that are into jewelry making are very bold personalities. And so I'm not sorry. Oh, somebody in the comments said a purse charm. That would be awesome. So yeah, you definitely can do a lot of different things with this. All right, so as far as the materials are concerned, it really doesn't take a whole lot. The biggest thing in this project is going to be the beads. We're going to take a look at these chunky quartz beads, and I'm going to show you how I pick out which ones that I use for certain things. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. There are some Czech glass beads. These are probably my very favorite Czech glass beads that Michael's carries. They carry them in a whole lot of colors, but this one color, and I don't even know that you would call it a color. Let's see, what do they call it on the back? It's just pink fire polish, but honestly, it's like a rose gold. And it's clear, but it has that rose gold on the outside. And then you can see, like with this one, you can see that rose gold flash in the inside. And it also has that, that rainbow effect to it. It's just a really beautiful bead that I find that as a pink or as a peach, it works really well as a neutral. So I don't necessarily consider it pink, but we'll call it that because that's the way it's labeled. The other beads are some of the glass beads, these faceted, and you can see I've got some of them up here that are off of the card. I use these all the time in my classes. I love them. They usually come with 4 different strands, and so you get 4 different sizes. There's a ton of them. It's a great economical buy, right? Because you've got 4 different sizes of something all in the same color. One card with 4 strands is going to go a long way as far as your projects are concerned, particularly when you're doing earrings, because in this earrings project, each earring only uses 4 of the smallest of these. So we have all of these beads left over for other projects, which is really, really nice. Some round beads here that are just metal. They're irregular. They're not perfectly round hoops. You can find just about anything to use in substitute if you don't want to use these. Something smaller, even as small as maybe a 10mm jump ring. Okay, so just because I'm using this large ring doesn't mean you have to find this exact one. There are a lot of options at Michael's when it comes to looking for solid rings for things. And again, if you're going to go smaller, I would just go with a large jump ring. So got these. I always have these on hand with the little metal beads that we talked about in my last class. Another thing you're going to need is some chain. I love to buy chain from Michael's because you get a ton of it, right? This copper chain, I've cut some of it off for this project and I still have plenty of it left over. It's a really beautiful antique copper color. It's going to look really good with our color palette that we're working with here. I've got some antique copper findings as well. I've got the jump rings and the ear wire. So you can really find any metal color that you want as far as your metals are concerned at Michael's. And we're mixing our silvers, right, with our antique copper. So there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. And antique copper is one of those that you can really mix with anything. You could mix this with rose gold. You could mix it with gold, and it looks really beautiful. I love it with silver though. All right, the last thing that you're going to need is some wire. Now, I get my wire on the big spool. Don't necessarily look at the spool. This is not the way you're going to buy it at Michael's. You're going to get it in the little blister packs, but I just want to show you what it is. So I'm using some Beadalon German style wire, and I'm using the 24 gauge wire. I use a lot of 22 gauge for things. 24 gauge was exactly what I needed for this project though, because we've already got a really large earring going on and we use a lot of wire. I didn't want it to be overly bulky, and I also didn't want to add extra weight to it. So that's why I went with the 24 gauge. We're going to use that 24 gauge for our messy wire wrap as well as our little wire wraps for our beads. And then the last little bit of hardware or materials that you're going to need is just some head pins. I've got the Beadalon head pins here, just a couple of these. I think you only need 2 for each earring. So you're going to need 4 total. Okay. All right, as far as your tools are concerned, you just need your standard tools and a cutter tool. I always use 2 pairs of pliers for making my wrapped loops, round nose pliers for the wrapped loops, and a cutter tool. So you don't really need anything as far as specialty tools are concerned with this project. All right, so let's talk about, before we even get into the earring, let's talk about these quartz beads, because I feel like sometimes these can be a challenge to use. And though they're absolutely gorgeous, they are irregular. And sometimes that's what keeps people from using them. So let's take a look at them. Actually, I've got one here that's still on the card. And this is kind of a good example for the way they look, just laying out all in a row is awesome. So one of the ways that I love to use these is just to transfer them from the card over to a piece of bead stringing wire, or over to, you know, a piece of German style wire or artistic wire in small sections or in the entire section, and make this the focal of a necklace. They're gorgeous. They all go together. They're chunky. They're fun. They've got that iridescence to them. You can just add chain to this, or you can bead the rest of the way around if you want to. And they look great like that. You don't have to really overthink it. So if you use them this way, they're already ready for you. But now if you want to take them apart and use them individually, that's where you run into some challenges with these. And we're going to talk about that a little bit, because it's going to make a difference in your earring. So when I take them off the card and I want to make earrings, if I'm making a pendant, I'm just looking for one. But if I'm going to make earrings, I want them to be as similar as possible. They're not going to be exact, but I want them to be as close as I can get them in size, which may be hard to do because you've got a lot of different sizes and a lot of different you know, widths with these. They're not just the length, but the width of the bead itself. Like this one you can see is really wide. So I like to look at them, see if I can find two that resemble each other pretty close. They don't have to be twins, guys. You're not going to find two that are exactly the same, but you want them to be as close as possible. That's only the first part of choosing one of these beads. This is the one that I've chosen for this project. I'm going to sit it up here so I don't get it mixed in with the others. The second thing you want to look at is the way that they're drilled. And you're going to find that they are drilled all differently. And part of the reason is because of the shape. They really have to be drilled however it works for that bead in particular. So a lot of times I will take a head pin or just a piece of wire, and I will run it through the hole just to kind of see like where that's going to sit. And I'll look at it from all sides. So you can see if I'm looking at it from the front, it looks pretty good. Well, the front, just as far as how I picked it up. Okay. But looking down at it this way, you can see there is more of that wire exposed on this back side. Now that may not necessarily make a difference depending on what your project is, but it's definitely something to take into consideration if you're going to do any wire wrapping. So if you're going to do a messy wrap, you're going to be able to cover all of that up. You also want to take a look at the top. Like, is this going to be conducive to wrapping it like a briolette, which is sort of what we're going to do today. All of those things have to be taken into consideration when you're looking at how you're going to use this in your project. Some of them are going to work and some of them aren't, just for that project. They're all going to work for something, but I usually go through all of them and I'll check, is that drilled in the center of that bead? That looks pretty good, right? And the top of this one, though it has a little bit of a slant, it still would work for this project because I can always cover the top of that up with the messy wire wrap. But as far as the drill is concerned, it's pretty straight across as far as, you know, going from the widest part of the bead. So that's a good choice. And this one looks pretty good too, but you don't really know until you put your wire through it. And you can see this one's drilled more towards the back than it is to the front. It's not enough to make a huge difference. This would make a great choice as well. And I know it seems tedious, but it really makes a huge difference. If you'll just look, you know, just take a look to see where that drill hole is, because sometimes you pick a bead just based on the shape and then you go to run your wire through it and you're like, whoa, it's not going to hang exactly like I wanted it to for this project. So most of these are drilled pretty close to the center. Sometimes I get a strand and it's not. And honestly, it's not that they're duds. It's just based on the shape, again, of the bead. And they drill through the widest part. This is another really good choice. This is a good one because it's even though it's, you know, it's got a slant, it has the same slant on this side. So the drill is very even on that. And it's got a nice flat top, which makes it really cool and easy to work with. If you want to do anything with the top of it, just checking the rest of these. Still only got a couple more to go. This one's drilled okay, but you can see like me personally, I probably would have drilled it this way, but I don't drill beads. I just check them. I'm just checking them to see what's going to work for my project. Right. And yeah, you don't have to do them all individually. You can put a few on at a time just to kind of save time, but just wanted to be sure that we really looked through these really well. This is a great one. This is a really good one. This one's drilled really well. It's a really good size. The top of it is nice. There is that slant, but that's not something that I can't work with. I feel like we already looked at this one. Yeah. All right. So the one that I ultimately picked out is this one. And now that I'm looking at it again, though, you see that it's drilled at a slant. Now that's not necessarily a deal breaker for me. But it is something to definitely notice when it comes to working with it, because your wire is going to be, you know, longer on one side than the other, just because it's not drilled straight across. It is kind of drilled at an angle. I'm not mad at it though. We're still going to use this one, even though it's drilled a little different. All right. So we're going to move on. We've gone through all of those. I know that that seems like, you know, it takes a lot of time to do, but I promise it really is worth it in the end. You want to make life as easy for yourself as possible when you're working with these beads, because they're already challenging because they're so irregular. So as far as wire is concerned, that 24 gauge wire to do our messy wrap, and that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with about 30 inches. Now, you can adjust this however you want to. If 30 inches, and that's what's used on this one, is too much, because some people don't like all of that wire. If that's too much, cut it down. You don't have to use all 30 inches. Some people are going to want even more. You can make it even longer than that if you want to. Okay. You just want to be sure that you leave yourself plenty to work with. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So we've got our 30-inch piece here, and we're going to thread our bead onto it, but we're not going to thread our bead to the middle. We want to thread our bead about 5 inches in from the end. Okay, so we've got like 5-6 inches on one side, and then we have the whole rest of the length over here on the other side. And we're just going to take those wires, and we're going to bend them straight up like this to get started. Okay, and that's going to, number one, it's going to ensure that your bead doesn't slip around while you're doing anything, but it's also going to kind of help you to really look at the top of your bead in relation to that wire. And then we want to crisscross these wires like we're going to wire wrap a briolet. Now, that's challenging because the top of this bead is irregular. It's at a slant. So you kind of have to figure out, do you want your wrap to be at the tip top of that slant, or do you want it to be more towards the middle here? It really makes no difference to me, but it might to you, right? So you can see when I cross those wires, they're not even. The crisscross part, I want to keep that as even as possible to the center of the bead. But as far as the wires are concerned, they're not going to look the same. Okay. All right. Now, the shorter wire is the one that we want to bend straight up and down. This is going to be the wire that we add our beads to and we make our wrapped loop with. The longer wire is the one we're going to do all of that messy wrapping with, and that's the one you want to bend out. You want to get that L shape, even if your wires are kind of funny shaped below that, right? And then you're just going to do, you're going to start your wire wrap. And you're going to just have to be patient. Okay. It can be challenging, so go slow. We're going to wrap around that straight wire a couple of times. Now notice I'm going from the top, the first wrap I made downwards, and that's what we're going to do because we want to wrap all the way around this. And there's a couple of different ways you can do this. You can keep wrapping like this and wrap from the top to the bottom, and you can fill in, or you can make big open spaces like I'm doing to wrap around. I find that that's a really good way to get it started, is to make it open. For one thing, I can come down and wrap underneath where the two wires are coming out on either side of the bead. So I know for sure that I've got those covered up, right? And then the rest of this is just kind of wrapping around however you want to, and you can make it nice and uniform. You can make it messy, but you want to cover up as much of that bead, that the top of the bead that's showing as possible. And you're going to do like I do most of the time. You're going to play around with it, and you may wrap around a few times and not like it and undo a couple of wraps. You can push down with your fingers to kind of put that wire where you want it to go, but you do kind of have to let it do its own thing a little bit. That's what makes the messy wire wrap cool. Really kind of has its own personality. You don't want to force it, right? You want to let it just be as organic as possible. And you want to use up as much of the wire as you want to. You don't have to use all 30 inches if you don't want, right? If it looks pretty good like that and you want to stop, you can stop. You don't have to use the rest of this. Really, the key to this is just going slow. You got a little bit more control over the mess if you go slow. All right, so I'm actually not going to use all 30 inches of mine just because I like the way this one's looking. You can see I've got like 7 inches of wire left. I'm actually going to just stop while I'm ahead, right? It's not broken, don't fix it. I'm going to take the wire. I've kind of moved it back up here to the top. I am going to circle around my short straight wire a couple times. Okay. And I'm going to leave that for just a second. We're going to refer back here to our sample. So on our sample, you can see the wire wraps. One of them is a little thicker. This one I used more wire on, and that's fine. I'm not super concerned with it, but you got a couple of options here. In the instructions, it says that you can go ahead and cut this wire off if you want to, or you can leave this one and use it as your wraparound wire for these two beads. I feel like I've got enough of the straight wire here because I gave myself, remember at the beginning, a good 5 or 6 inches. That's what we're going to use to wrap around these two beads. But if you feel like for some reason this one was too short, leave this and don't cut it off yet until after you add your beads. We're going to go ahead and cut ours off because we don't need it, but it's just a little added insurance, you know, if you're worried that your short wire is just too short. Okay. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to thread on one of our Czech glass beads. And then we're going to thread on one of the smallest of the little crystals. And we're going to use our pliers to do a wrapped loop. And we want to wrap this directly to our hoop here. And to do that, you're going to notice we got to have a large loop. I normally make a pretty small loop. This one's going to have to be kind of large because it's got to clear the surface area of this hoop. Okay, so I'm going to come in with my chain nose pliers. I'm placing those right where the wire is exiting the bead, and I'm going to bend the wire over the top of the pliers. This part doesn't change regardless of what size loop you need. It's the step for this is always the same. We're going to take our pliers away, and then we're going to come in with our round nose pliers. But now this is where it gets different. So I normally make my loops down here towards the end of the pliers. I come back just a tiny bit. This time I want to come as far back as I can to make as large a loop as possible with my round nose pliers. So I'm going to take the wire, I'm going up and over the top barrel of the pliers, and then I'm going to rotate the pliers so that I can take the wire all the way over to the other side to make that loop. Then I'm just going to slide that off of the pliers, okay, because we're going to wrap this directly to our ring here. So take the tail end of your wire, thread it through the center of the ring, and then you just very carefully want to kind of maneuver that, slip that over the edge of the ring, and try not to distort your loop too much, right? Now, this is where my bent chain nose pliers comes into play because I really like to use the bent chain nose pliers to hold on to that loop. It's the perfect fit, you know, it's the perfect angle, but it also keeps the tip of those pliers out of the way. So now I'm going to wire wrap between the loop and our top bead. Now, I've still got leftover wire, and I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it to just wrap around. So at an angle around that crystal bead, then I'm going to wrap between both. And you can go all the way around if you want to, and then go down the surface of the next one, or you can just go on to the next one. It's really up to you. And then I'm going to come down here where all of my wraps are. And I'm just going to kind of wrap this in, right? Just like you're adding it to the messy wrap that you've already got. And then I'm going to come in with my cutter and trim off the excess. So it looks like all one piece of wire, even though we're actually working from 2 different directions, right? All right, so we've got that wire wrapped on, and honestly, that makes an amazing pendant all by itself, you know? Just string this, put a jump ring on it and string it onto something if you wanted to. It's a cute little charm for just about anything. So you have options. You don't have to do this exactly the way I did. And also you don't have to do this additional little wrap around the beads. It's just a fun little accent to just kind of tie all of that wrapping together, but totally skippable. You don't have to do that part if you don't want to. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next step of this. And the next step is we are going to make another little beaded dangle that also looks good all by itself. So we're going to do another wrapped loop with some 24 gauge wire with a large loop and a smaller loop. And then we're going to attach some chain to this, and the bottom of our chain, we're just going to wire wrap some of those Czech glass beads. Okay, so we're going to start out up here with this part. And so we're just going to need about 4 inches of the 24 gauge wire. You can cut another piece. You can use scraps from your wire wrapping, whichever you want to do. And we're going to make an eye pin with a wrapped loop. I'm going to come down on the wire about 1.5 inches, 2 inches. Okay. And I'm going to bend the wire. All right. Now, again, coming in with my round nose pliers, and we want this to be a large loop. So we're coming back here towards the back of the pliers, going up and over, and then rotate the pliers so you can take the wire on around to the other side, take it off of the tool, and we're going to thread this directly to our ring. All right, just slide those two together and hold with your bent chain nose pliers. And you're going to do your wire wraps. Do about 3 or 4. Okay, and then you just want to come in with your cutter tool and trim off. We're going to thread on 3 of the small crystals. And then we're going to do another wrapped loop. I'm going to trim off some of this. This was my scrap piece, so it's extra long. I don't need all of that. All right, we're going to do another wrapped loop. Now this wrapped loop can be a normal size wrapped loop. The steps are the same. Grab the wire where it exits the bead, bend over the top of the pliers. Come in with your round nose pliers, just a, whatever normal size loop you like to make. And then we're wire wrapping, and I'm kind of having to be mindful of all the things that are already hanging here, but it's all right. All right, and then we're going to come in with our cutter tool and trim off the excess. All right, so now we've got that ready to go. It's ready to add other things to it. Out of our chain here, we're going to cut 2 pieces of chain. And let's see, how did I do mine? So mine were cut and then attached with a jump ring, and I didn't take the jump ring off. I just wanted to show you. So I've got 2 pieces of chain here that are in different lengths so that they hang differently. And you can do these however you want to. The longer one is a little over 1 inch long. It's got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 links. And the other one is just half of that. It only has 4 links. And then I just connected the 2 of those together with a little jump ring. I'm going to open this jump ring and attach it to this wrapped loop down here. I forgot that I didn't take this completely apart before the project, so I apologize for that. But you can make those 2 pieces of chain whatever length you want them to be. Close that back. All right. And then we're just going to wire wrap some of those beautiful Czech glass beads to the bottom of this. And you don't have to use Czech glass beads. In fact, you could use these little crystals again if you wanted to. I just liked this added little pop of shimmer. So on the shorter piece, I'm going to do 2 of the Czech glass beads, and then on the longer piece, I'm just going to do 1. And we're going to do those with head pins. You can make your own head pins with your wire if you want to. You don't have to buy extra head pins, totally up to you. But I want to wire wrap these directly on, so I'm not going to use a jump ring. Okay, so thread that on. We're going to start our wrapped loop. So bending the wire over the top of the pliers. All these steps are the same, just repeating all the same techniques, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Practice makes perfect. Okay, so there's our loop. Now, before we do the wraps, take the tail of the wire, just like we did with our ring, and we're going to thread that through the last link of our chain and just snap those 2 together. Again, holding with my bent chain nose pliers. And then I'm going to kind of cup everything in my hand just to kind of hold it out of the way so it's not falling down as I'm doing my wire wraps here. Okay, so there's that. And then I'm just going to come in with my cutter tool and trim off the excess. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. If you need to clean that up a little bit, if your wire is where you cut it is kind of sticking up a little bit. Mine's not too bad, but you can see it sticks out just a tiny, tiny bit. I'm just going to give that a squeeze with my chain nose pliers just to kind of tuck it in. just in case. Even the smallest little wire can get hung on your clothing or in your hair, and that's never a good thing. So, all right, the other one on the shorter piece of chain is going to have 2 of the check glass beads. Same steps. We're just going to do a wrapped loop. So bending the wire over the top of the pliers, coming in with our round nose pliers up and over, rotate, take the wire over to the other side. And then again, take the tail end of that wire, thread it through the last link of your chain. Hold with your bent chain nose pliers and kind of cup everything in your hand. And wire wrap. And really, this is all there is to this. We're pretty much at the done point. We're going to add our hardware to this to turn it into an actual earring. However, if you wanted to make this into a pendant or a purse charm or a keychain or, you know, whatever you wanted to do with it other than an earring, of course, even if you wanted to make it an earring, you can still add other things to this. You've got a whole ring that you can fill up with any kind of dangle that you want. So you've got lots of room to add other things. And not only that, but you have these links in the chain where you could fill this up sort of like cha-cha style. You could add a bead to every single link on either side if you wanted to and really make it full. The only reason that I suggest that if you're going to do this as a charm or a pendant instead of an earring is because anything you add past this point is just going to add additional weight. So it may be a heavy earring when you're done with it if you want to add extra things to it, but if you're going to use it somewhere else and it's not going to hang from your ear, then obviously weight is not necessarily going to be a huge issue. So, all right, so that part's done. The only thing we have left to do is just attach our ear wire. And to attach our ear wire, we needed to use a combination of 2 jump rings. For starters, we needed a jump ring that was large enough to clear this hoop or ring, whatever you want to call it. It's kind of thick, so we needed a larger jump ring for that. If I just put 1 jump ring on here and then put the ear wire on it, it's going to hang side to side, right? Based on the loop on the ear wire. That's not what I wanted. I wanted it to face frontwards, and so I needed a go-between jump ring. So I'm using a much smaller jump ring as my go-between. And I chose a smaller one because it's already a really long earring. And jump rings tend to add extra length. So I didn't want to add a whole lot of extra length. So I kept a tiny jump ring for this part so that everything is going to face front. Thread on my ear wire. And that's it. Now you've got so many options here, right? You could use a donut bead, right? You could use a large jump ring. You could use any kind of metal ring. You could use any kind of shape that you wanted to, or you can make your own with some wire. If you wanted to, you could make your own little ring with some 18 gauge wire, some 16 gauge wire. So got a lot of possibilities. You don't have to use a pre-made component here. And you really can get super, super creative with this. So I think they're really cool. Like I said, this is not going to be an earring for everybody. It's definitely big, but it is super trendy right now. This whole like boho beachy kind of style. Like this is not over the top beachy, but it is very natural and organic as far as your crystals and the shapes and the messy wire wrap is concerned, but could be easily adjusted, you know, to your own style if you wanted something smaller or if you needed something a little bit different, right? Or you wanted to change the metals up. All right, I'm going to turn you around. I'm going to show you what these look like hanging because it is a little bit different than just seeing them laying on the mat. And then I'm going to let you guys go for the day. So let me turn you around here. All right, so I'm going to hold them up for you because again, the size is different. It's not different, but it does look a little different. You can really get kind of an idea of how it's going to hang. And then the size in relation to my hands and my face and my head and that whole, which you just don't get when you see it on the bead mat, right? And I'll put it on for you. And they're not heavy. The crystal chunky beads, they're really not as heavy as they look. They're kind of deceptive in that they're not a heavy bead, But I do caution adding extra stuff to this because you will eventually start to create some extra weight. You can see it's not really pulling on my ear much at all. So they're not super heavy, but again, adding more is definitely going to add to that. I hope you guys have enjoyed this project. I think these are cool, and they've got a lot of options with this, right? To get creative. If my camera would cooperate, you could actually see both of these, but yeah, they're really cool. And you've got enough beads left over. You could make a pendant. You could make a whole set out of this if you wanted to. Just super cool. So, all right, you guys, thank you so much for joining me this Saturday. I hope that you have enjoyed this class and that I have inspired you. Don't forget to go back and watch this on replay if you want to. It takes about 24 to 48 hours for this to be uploaded over to the Michael's YouTube channel, where you can watch it as many times as you want to, and you can fast forward through all of my chit chat if you want. And also be sure to check out the other designers and the other projects, not just the jewelry projects. There is a whole library of amazing jewelry projects and amazing designers, but there is also a world of other things. You want to learn how to draw, you want to learn how to sew, crochet, you name it. It's over on the Michael's YouTube channel. So just be sure that you subscribe and check the little bell so that you can be notified every time they upload a new video, and you won't miss anything, even if you can't make it to class. All right, guys, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I'll see you again soon with another fun project. Thanks, guys. Bye.